Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Majority Show. Coming at you live every Wednesday at 7 p.m. from Majority Towers here in central Scotland. Let's just say that. I'm the host, Mark Devlin, and this is Scotland's number one anti-nationalist chat and comments show. I'm here tonight with my co-hosts, David Griffiths, Mark Ziegfeld, and Mary Devlin. Mark Ziegfeld, we haven't heard from you in a while. How are things with you?
Yeah, it's been good, thanks. Just been pottering about and listening to all that's been going on, and there's quite active recently, isn't it?
A few things have been happening for sure.
A couple of things happening.
Sure, but what are you going to be talking about tonight?
Right, I'm going to talk about the First Minister giving away more of our millions abroad.
Right, okay, very good. All right, and David, how are you doing tonight anyway? What are you going to be talking about? You're going to be talking.
Well, tonight I will be assessing where exactly the death of Alex Salmond leaves us with the next Holyrood election fast approaching, just over 18 months away now, guys.
Right. Mary, how are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. But tonight I'll mostly be staying in the background dealing with a multitude of comments.
Yes, okay. And of course, we're all going to be talking about the death of Alex Salmond, his legacy of hate and division, and what happens next.
And of course, we have Zoomer of the Week.
So we'll be back with all that and much more in just a few seconds. Right, welcome back to Scotland's number one politics and chat from an anti-nationalist perspective. Majority's aim is a thriving Scotland without the toxic nationalism that is strangling the country's potential. Thank you, John. Mary I don't think Mary has a Zoom.
I don't have one tonight,
but she will win.
I would have won anyway, so I'm giving you guys
wins anyway. Of course,
I'm
here with Mary, with Mark Ziegfeld. And also with David Griffiths as well. Now, normally we give thanks to UK Union Voice, who has been a great supporter of this show on their Facebook page. But I just noticed that they sent a message out saying they stopped posting over there, and so we'd like to thank them for, of course, their support, but also not just for support of us, but for the huge amount of work that they did over the years, since I think even before the referendum. It's been going on for so long, where they've put out, they say, over 30,000 pieces of material, including memes, billboards, ad vans, leaflets, ads, all kinds of things as well. So they've done a fantastic effort for fighting back against toxic nationalism. But of course, we still extend our thanks, of course, to United Against Separation Facebook page, where many of you are watching from tonight.
And remember, sharing is caring. The best thing you can do is to like the show on YouTube. Even if you don't subscribe, drop a like. And if you can't subscribe, please do so. It does help to increase the reach of the show at the click of one button.
Yes.
Go
ahead, Mary.
And as usual, I will be managing the relentless flow of comments. So please keep them short and snappy, and I'll try to put as many on screen as I can.
Right, I'm just going to show click my wee thing. How does it go like that? It's not supposed to go like that. It's supposed to look more like that. There we go. That was the UK Union Voice page. Anyway, a very nice message on there to their followers. Now, okay, so we'll be back in just a few. We don't need to go back. We'll just start where we are.
Let's just do it.
That's it. As we all know, Alex Salmond is dead. And he, former First Minister, died of a heart attack in North Macedonia while spreading nationalist propaganda at a conference over there. We've got some clip of that, actually, which we'll show you a little bit. Not of him killing over, but of him talking before that. Reports say that he died at lunch while trying to open a bottle of ketchup. Now, we've got into some people have been unhappy about our approach to this. We've been criticising Alex Salmond online, so I'm going to address that first because those criticisms will continue in the show. We are not here to praise Salmond. We are here to bury him, as the expression goes. It seems strange to me that some people would rather get upset about our criticisms of Salmond, actual truths about Salmond, than the people who are, out there lying about him day to day as well. And I think it comes down to no one's under any obligation to treat a politician with kid gloves, especially one such as Salmond, who created so much division. As it says here, he lived and died by the sword. But more than that, I think our obligation, or my obligation to our followers, is to be honest. I think if anyone, given our output up to now and what we've done, we've always been forthright and discussed things in a very frank manner. I think that if we were to go all mealy-mouthed about this and say, oh, he was a giant of Scottish politics, but all that kind of things, then I think I don't think you would believe that. And I don't think that's what we're about here, or certainly we're not what I'm about anyway. And so there's been a variety of comments. I'm going to go through them because it's too long, of people saying, oh, now is not the time, or be humane and all this. It's like, none of that's important, really. What we have to do is to be honest with our followers and say, this was what happened with this man. And you see, no one else is talking about this in this way. I just read an article by Alex Massey. They all talk about the court case, and they talk about the failings of the man, but they don't talk about how he divided our country, and anything about the nationalism that he has put out that caused all this toxicity that's around us right now. So I feel that our job, of course, is to stand up for the people who've been bullied, gaslit by Salmond for decades. And, we need to, a person like that doesn't deserve any respect or support. So if you're the person looking for that, or that kind of mealy-mouthed stuff, you might as well go away. No point. Because this is what's going to happen. We have a frank discussion about what this person did to Scotland, and for his own political aggrandizement, is what it says here. So with that...
Well, I think mostly what you're saying there, Mark, is basically now that he's dead, we'll say the same things when he's dead as we would have said when he was still alive.
Yeah. Some people say, well, now's not the time. I'm like, well, when is the time? The time is when right now they're trying to make it into a saint, and we're going to talk a little bit about that as we go forward. So why should we stand by and do that? Should we stand by and let them roll over us as they always do? I don't think that's right. We should be able to say, no, this person wasn't a saint. This was the way they behaved, and so on, right? Yes, I mean, of course, we have to discuss these things. But I mean, this is the thing. This guy wasted everyone's time for many years really, on a false quest, is from our perspective, and from perhaps the perspective of the majority of Scots. Now, David, you had any trouble on social media or any pushback from your comments?
Well, I'm surprisingly little, to be honest. I possibly, though, being a little more circumspect in my output since the big event. I mean, the only comment I made immediately on hearing news was to say, oh, well, I guess Scotland won't be independent within 10 years then, because that was pretty much the thrust of Alex Salmond's last interview that he gave, maybe 10 days before he died. And a couple of people said, oh, mate, you can't say that, something. That was only very mild, though, mild rebuke. But... I have made since then quite a few comments about some of the more absurd descriptions of Salmond, and additionally about some of the more ludicrous suggestions made about how his life should be celebrated. But I haven't really said anything that would be offensive. Funnily enough, I was sent, I discussed this with Mark Z earlier this week, I was sent a screenshot from someone I don't even know who's jousted with me a couple of times, saying, she seems determined to pick fights for me, and she'd said that she believes it's that guy Griffiths who's saying all this majority stuff. Listen, darling.
No, well, I'm happy to admit to that I'm behind it all, because I have no truck with this guy at all. I don't, I think it's fair game. It's politics, it's fair game. Mark, do you agree with that? It's politics is fair game?
Oh, without a doubt, politics is fair game. Look, from my perspective, my condolences do go out to his family and his friends. I think whether he's my enemy, whether he's what I think about him is irrelevant on that point. But as far as I'm concerned, the politics, the divisiveness, and the way nationalists are using this for a political gain, which they certainly are, especially at SNP, I think it's only right that we should discuss his legacy and what he did what he's done to Scotland. And I don't think we should hold back on that, on comments about what happened in the past, where we've been because of Alex Salmond. I don't think that's disrespectful at all. I think it's only right. Why should we not discuss things that we think is relevant to what's happened, while we're getting from nationalists saying, "Oh, Westminster should have given him the RAF plane, and they should have done this," and we've heard all that. So we have just as much right to, and we're not hypocrites. We're not hypocrites, and that's the one thing I don't like more than anything is the hypocrisy we are seeing from a lot of people.
David is
sorry, I'm eager to jump in here,
David
Mark.
is certainly going to talk about that a bit, but let Mary jump in. Go ahead.
So here's a nice comment from Nan. I think this is part of Alex Salmond's legacy that we've been talking about. She said, "You're all a disgrace. Stones, glass houses, etc. You're the ones dividing Scotland by all your shite. If you don't like us, the true Scottish people, then feck off to England."
Why do they always say that feck thing, like in Irish as well? It's like, if you want to use the word, use the real word. I mean, this is to my mind, this is a very indicative of Alex Salmond's legacy. Before we go on to that, I'll just go. Hopefully, see this. There we go. Independence in 10 years. That was the one that. I keep wanting to call you Derek today. I don't know why that is.
Mark, we don't even know anyone called Derek.
We do. Oh, I do know someone.
Oh, do you know someone?
Yes, I know someone called Derek.
There was a proper Derek
anyway.
Once there was a Derek Griffiths on Play School or something many years ago.
That must be what he's thinking of.
Right. Yes. Oh, that guy. Yes. Oh, yeah. I remember him. Yeah, he was cool. Right. So anyway, of course. So let's that disclaimer aside. Let's talk about Salmond's legacy, and I will start it with a remembrance of what life was like before he divided Scots. Now, remember the days before the majority of Scots. Now, remember this: the majority of Scots were called traitors, Yuns, lickspittles, quislings, and house jocks. Every single one of those insults is the fault of Alex Salmond. Now, remember the days before Scottish nationalism was conflated with Irish republicanism, and the majority of Scots were falsely labelled as Unionists. Again, all the fault of Alex Salmond. Remember the days before every political decision in Scotland was made without caring whether it would upset a minority of angry nationalists? Again, Alex Salmond's fault. And remember the days when you could support your national team or wave a saltire without it being hijacked for nationalist propaganda purposes? Again, all the fault of Alex Salmond. All these things, I've been reading almost every article of Alex Salmond's death. None of them have mentioned anything like this. Not a single one have mentioned the actual deep divisions that he himself personally caused. And who gets the benefit of it? Who gets the benefit of all the division? Him. He get the benefit of it. He get the wealth and he get the power. That's what he got. And the rest of us, what do we get? We're left with, wasteland. Anyway, Derek, I'm sure. Derek.
David, can you change your name?
Yeah, just change your name for this show.
Just call me Deek.
Right. No, I'm sure you've got something to say about, the Hampden thing last night, right?
That's exactly right. In the old days, I used to go to see Scotland football matches more than any other sporting team, more than I'd go and see Rangers. This is way back until maybe the early 80s. But it just became very different when nationalism set in, and it wasn't in any... to any extent, it wasn't the same as it had been previously, though. There genuinely was some sense of kinship, and you all felt part of something. Everybody wanted Scotland to do well, and suddenly Rangers players were being booed and stuff, and it just was never the same. And anybody seen with the Rangers top on there would get abused by these guys who were the nouveau Scots. So I just stopped going altogether. I haven't watched the Scotland game in a bit.
Well, that's a specific experience for you as like a Rangers supporter, right? But I mean, for personally, me, I'm not particularly into sports. That's it. But I wouldn't mind watching the Scottish national. I watched football from everyone. Well, I used to.
Yep.
But now I just think, well, that's just, I don't want to see all the saltires and this send them home again, Flower of Scotland guff that they're all revelling in. This is the key. They're revelling in it.
Sometimes the camera pans to faces in the crowd, and they're almost, what would you say, obsessed. They're all giving it all listen, almost crying as they sing that awful song. That song which was brought into the mainstream 50 years ago after a British Lions tour. Billy Steele, the Scotland Wing, brought it in. It was just a kind of protest song, you know, let's be a nation again. And now they sing it every week, and it's such a dirge, and it's so slow, and even when they can't quite get a semitone in the bagpipe, so it's out of tune as well. It's just like, guys, you're just making a show of yourselves. Stop doing this. It's just too much. It's.
I mean, even there, like last night, they have the thing. Okay, it's a minute's clapping for Alex Salmond. Well, what if you're not in the What if you're not in the SNP or whatever? You're not going to clap for that. What's the point of that? I don't really get that part.
I mean, what's worse, they're talking about doing it at some games this weekend. Let me tell you, it's going to be very interesting if they try that stunt at Kilmarnock against Rangers at midday on Sunday. Rangers fans,
but you know, it's all part of the same division, though, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's just
absolutely.
pitting people against one another. You know, it's Lizzie's in a box, or Salmon's in a box, or whatever it is. I don't know what they're going to come up with. I'm sure it'll be inventive, but that's not really where we want to be, is it?
No,
I don't think it's a place. Anyway, more on the legacy. Mark, what about some legacy stuff for you before we go back to David?
Yeah, I think his legacy is failing, being a failed politician. He set out to get independence, and he didn't get it. So I think that's his legacy. He's divided Scotland. The Scotland I used to know, and we see by that comment Mary read out, you know, it's a case of now what he's done is he's brought Anglophobic into our society, where we're being taught to hate the English. It's just I'm staggered, quite honest with you, some of the things I've read. Where was the outrage when Angus Robinson said the elderly should die off to give us a hope COVID kills off the one good thing about COVID, wasn't it? The one good thing about COVID was the elderly, it'll kill off the elderly and we'll get independence quicker. Where was the outrage then? Where were these people standing up then saying, making comments then? I didn't hear any of them.
Nope.
So, you know, hypocrisy, again, it's something I just can't stand is hypocrisy. False outrage, that's all it is.
This is going to be hard. David.
Okay, right. Legacy, my thoughts.
I don't know where this is coming from, but anyway. Right, so okay, go ahead. Your some thoughts on the legacy then.
Legacy, indeed, right. Salmond was someone who brought Scottish nationalism into mainstream UK politics. No question about it. He did. I mean, in the days before, they got I think they got 11 seats at one election in 1974. That's as many as they got. And then it was down at 2 or 3 when he came along. The problem I will always have with Salmond is, remember, Salmond is an economist. That's what he did at university. That was his specialist subject. So did he present watertight set of economic forecasts showing how Scotland would be better off under independence? Of course he didn't. All he did was use a lot of deception, a lot of politicking, half-truths and outright lies. That's what he did. And if you ask what Salmond's going to be remembered for, what was his masterpiece? The 2014 White Paper, a piece of absolute fiction and widely acknowledged as such now, just complete rubbish. And what will he be remembered for? The rocks in the sun stunt where he said all that melting the sun? No, you know what he will be remembered for? He'll be remembered for one phrase: facts are shields that win a ding. Whatever, I don't even know what it means. I don't care what it means. Okay. That rubbish and his endless, parcel of rogues sold for English gold. Nobody cares. It's not 1931 anymore. We don't talk that way. Okay, so all he could come up with was these heartstring plucking sound bites and this emphasis on Scottishness. That's what it was all about. Getting the independence referendum on the 200th or 700th anniversary of the Arbroath Declaration. All these stunts. It was just pathetic.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. It's like it's kind of stunts. Yeah. I mean, we talk about this a lot. You know, that the SNP was government by headline. You know, and this it seems to go on.
I agree. And Stephen Daisley, I mean, I'm not as big as fan as you know, and vice versa, but he did put it very well this week. The one man who can come up with a good line is Stephen Daisley. Alex Salmond made people dream, but unfortunately he couldn't stop them waking up. And that is so true, which is brilliant. And as Effie Dean said this week, Alex Salmond achieved absolutely nothing in his 10 years. And I would go further. I would say some of the people hosting this show, in fact, maybe all of the people hosting this show, have been more influential in Scottish politics since 2021 than Alex Salmond has. And I firmly believe that. Now, to me, the act that sums up the decline in Alex Salmond and how he really ended up as a nobody, was that in the 2024 general election 3 months ago, when he stood as the head of his own party and he spent the whole campaign excoriating the SNP and seeing how useless they were, he voted SNP.
Yes.
You know, it reminds me of, I don't know if you ever saw this in the early 80s, there was a TV adaptation of the Malcolm Bradbury novel, The History Man, about this trendy lefty professor at a new university. He used to shag all the students and preach all this left-wing philosophy. And at the end of it, he got a big job as a sociology professor. And on the little on-screen text, it said, in the 1979 general election, Howard Kirk voted Conservative. And that is how Alex Salmond's true legacy. He was such a failure in the end, he couldn't even vote for his own party. So, no, I'm sorry.
Well, that's quite, that is... Yeah, that's quite something that really, if you think about it, I mean, of course, we mentioned that here, but now when we say, well, what's the legacy? It becomes more apropos, as it were. It's this thing. I mean, we could talk about how Scotland would have been if he won the referendum, but the point is, he didn't win it, and he didn't win it by a good amount. I think. I mean, could we? I think that, you know, people, if the referendum would have been won, would they've had serious buyer's remorse now that they'd lost financial aid from the UK and from they had a hard border, and Alex Salmond is president for life. I mean, I don't think that's really that great. Plus, of course, sympathy for Russia and China and the anti-Israel nonsense that is going on around the world. As you know, I did ask, what did he achieve? And some people said they were like, too soon. You're like, well, of course, we should be asking that, of course. And some
if that's a response, it means it must be very negative then.
Well, you know, that's kind of people on our side. You're like, okay, wait a minute. But anyway, someone said free tuition. I mean, that thing, the stones will not melt and the sun will not shine. I can't, you know, they actually took that down, that statue from, it's not a statue, is it? What's it called?
Monolith. I don't know.
A folly. That's what you call it, from Stirling University, because what was happening was actually all the foreign students were paying, are still paying, and they didn't like to see this thing on there, apparently. Anyway, now it's in a cupboard somewhere or in a warehouse somewhere, rotting away. Anyway, but I mean, it's actually hard to find any kind of achievement at all. I mean, okay, so let's say it was free tuition, paid for by the UK.
Quite.
I mean, what kind of achievement is that? That's not an achievement. Achievement is making social change and all this type of stuff. Sure. And I would say that any social change he's made has been entirely for the negative. What's this say? Where are we at here?
We're at the discuss bit. Yeah, I mean, you know, his biggest single achievement to me. I'll just quickly say this because I don't want to monopolise this.
Just go on. We're going to go on a bit longer tonight because it's a big news.
No problem. You know, the one cast iron achievement of his career was introducing a sectarian element into Scottish politics, and that is true, guys. And he achieved this by, as we all know, he persuaded voters from Scotland's Irish Republican Democratic bloc vote effectively to jump ship from Labour to the SNP in, I think it was 2015, it really happened. And that was after the referendum and everything. But if you look back, people forget this, but at the time, the subject matter which made those voters jump across was the insistence of the Catholic Church in Scotland that single-sex couples couldn't adopt Catholic children. And so they went to the Labour Party, and the Labour Party said, rightly, well, we can't possibly do that. That would be homophobic. We can't do that. Salmond said, don't you worry, I'll do it. You leave it to me, I'll do it. And overnight, they jumped ship. And it was a lie. You couldn't do it, of course, because it would be illegal. You can't possibly, stop people who have a certain sexuality adopting children. We are not in the 1950s anymore. But that was the issue which the great progressive leader of Scotland chose as his battleground to entice voters from that demographic to jump ship. And thank God most of them have jumped back again. But this shows what a grubby politician he was. He would use any battleground, any potential issue, however hurtful, however wrong, just to get votes, and I detest that in the man. And I
think that's a legacy of the SNP in general, is that they'll jump in any bandwagon to get votes. Now, of course, they're on the anti-Israel nonsense, and that's to get some kind of votes for that. I don't know how that's going to work for them in the end. But I think that this sectarian thing is a thing. People seem to forget that before Salmond came along, the party was anti-Catholic. It was very rural as well. It was a kind of tweed jacket type of thing and nutters like that. Sorted nutters, and he brought that into the mainstream by appealing to this sectarian vote. And then what happened was, I think many of those Labour people weren't all that radicalised when they moved over, and they were just normal Labour people looking for an alternative. And what happens as soon as you get into something like that, then they start to radicalise you more and more and more. So we're at the point now where the SNP are probably the most anti-Semitic party, for one example, in Europe, if you don't count the Irish, which is terrible. But I mean, there's a similarity there, of course, as well. Right, you know what? We'll have a wee break for a second, and then Mark. Actually, Mark. Maybe saying you should have something to say.
Well, what one last legacy I think that he gave us was Nicola Sturgeon.
Oh, yes.
He put Nicola Sturgeon into that position. He was responsible for Nicola Sturgeon, and we've had 10 years, and now we're where we are now is because of Alex Salmond, by putting her in place. She was never, ever capable of doing the job in the first place. She was never, ever fit enough to be First Minister. And I think he knew that.
Right. Well, it was definitely a disaster for Scotland, both the two of them together. I mean, how many years was that? A long time. We're going to come back in a few seconds, and we're going to talk about Alex Salmond's final words, and then we're going to go on to, my experience with him personally. Okay, so we're back in a second. Right, welcome back to the Majority Show. This is Scotland's #1 international show, and we cover the topics other people will not talk about. Everything else is mealy-mouthed nonsense. We do not like nationalism. We do not. It's a toxic force in Scotland. So, and the people who brought it here are gain power from division, and that's not a very nice thing at all. Talking of that, Sir Alex Salmond was unrepentant. His final speech was littered with the same kind of Anglophobia, conspiracy theories, misdirections, and straight-up democracy denial that fueled his career. I'll play the whole of this. It's 2 minutes.
Life of England has huge tensions. There's a rise of a populist right-wing party which threatens the political establishment. So the interesting thing is, although Scotland obviously lost an opportunity, the UK has been diminished. And just one further point. Although, in referendum, you must expect outside influences of some kind or another. The European Union of that time, President Barroso in particular, was not helpful at all to Scotland. I sympathise greatly with your difficulties at the present moment. I think it's fair to say that President Juncker, his successor, would have taken a different stance because he was a Prime Minister of a small country. Barroso was not at all helpful. In fact, he was secretly combining with the United Kingdom or the UK government. Well, what happened as a result of that is the UK, as one of the major players in the European Union, ended up leaving 18 months later. So in many ways, it was a bad outcome for Europe as a whole. On the subject of what we're talking about, to reconcile differences, you need a legal framework. You need a situation where people are prepared to say that is the treaty or agreement or understanding. You certainly need leadership because usually to get that framework in place requires the leaders of various parties or countries or factions to go beyond their own particular interest and try to understand the interests of the other side. And I do think very strongly you need the cultural bridge release. And Northern Ireland, which we might come to later, would be a very positive example of how cultural understanding has helped promote a peace which seemed so elusive for so long. My general message is respect for legitimate democratic aspirations. leads to good outcomes. Disrespecting it in one way or another, and often surprisingly, can lead to bad outcomes for everyone. Thank you.
Right, so unrepentant to the end there, basically, as I said, spreading these kind of nonsensical conspiracy theories about what was going on in Europe, and then trying to say that we need a legal framework. This is the man who signed the Edinburgh Agreement, saying that the result of the referendum would be decisive and one that everyone would respect. Of course, he's on TV multiple times saying he would respect the result and it would be a once in a lifetime. Well, it's once in a lifetime for him, I suppose. But finally, he says respect for legitimate democratic aspirations leads to good outcomes. So self-serving. The thing is about this is he never respected democracy. Do you think he respected democracy, David?
Certainly not in the slightest. I remember seeing him in general elections in the 80s and 90s, genuinely thinking that the SNP was going to win a majority of the seats, and then of course they'd win 2. And he would still afterwards, he would never say, well, of course I accept that Scotland isn't ready for this. He never accepted that democratic outcome. He always felt that it was his right, his duty to go and steal votes in Scotland in order to somehow squeeze through this suicidal, insane notion of breaking away from the rest of the United Kingdom. No, I think he was the antithesis of a Democrat. No, I would say.
Well, Mark, you agree with that?
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think with that interview, it just shows you that word again, hypocrisy. It's just complete hypocrisy. And as far as I can remember, in 2014, the EU stayed out of the debate about Scotland, out of respect for the whole of the UK, because I think, as I remember, they said it's our decision and they should not be seen to get involved in it. And they didn't get involved in it. And to think that they had to say that they had a say in it, and as to why we voted for what we voted for, is just absolutely nonsense. It's complete, utter, it's blame culture. We'll blame the EU, we'll blame the UK, we'll blame foreign influences, we'll blame this, that, the other, except without respecting that the Scottish people said no.
Yes, and also this continuous gaslighting, like that thing about Scotland will be independent in my lifetime. All of this, it's as if it's like, if someone kept saying to you something that's not going to happen, you'd be like, why are you doing this? You try to browbeat me. You're trying to, why are you doing that? Why aren't you saying instead, I'm trying to my best to make this happen, right? Yeah. Not that will. How can you say it will? That's just that doesn't work like that anyway. Now, you may have noticed that I don't like Salmond very much, and mostly that's professional. This is our job to highlight who this person was, but some of it is personal. Last year, I was invited as a guest onto a show that Alex Salmond had on TalkTV. Now, for some reason, they decided to give him a 3-hour propaganda show. And I was the only person from the pro-UK side that was invited on. I found out later that some of the thing was rigged in more ways than one. Quite a few of the callers who called in were actually ALBA activists, pretending to be impartial members of the public. Oh, this is so great, Alex. This is great. I've never thought this way before. This kind of nonsense that they were coming out with. But in the actual interview section with me, they rigged it so that I couldn't actually see who I was talking to. Some people might say that was a benefit, but actually when you're in a live TV situation, it helps somewhat to be able to see the person you're talking to, and kept talking over me, and so that I couldn't answer. I'll give you a taste of the end, how it ended up here, with him talking over me constantly and trying to change the topic. This brings us to a wider issue, really. I mean, do the people of Scotland really want to have a bunch of grifters and no-hopers and gropers in the Parliament?
You're being very hard on Scottish parliamentarians, for goodness sake, Mark.
Come on.
Is it the waste of money, or the fact that you just don't like them?
Would you mind not interrupting me when I'm speaking?
What's the debate, Mark?
You get the whole show. You get 3 hours to talk on this show to put forward your wishful thinking, ideas that basically came to an end in 2014. And other people, you know, the majority of Scots, you ignored them for so many years. Your protege, Nicola Sturgeon, ignored us. We won the 2014 referendum, okay? And you have no path forward from here.
But Mark, you've been arguing the SNP have won 14 out of the last 15 elections in Scotland, despite your best efforts. Are you saying that now you think you've discovered the secret formula? When independence is at 48%, you think you can turn back the time?
49%.
It's 49%. I'm sorry, I'm underestimating independence. Now 49%.
39%. In the polls.
Oh, no, in the last two polls, 48%. Yesterday's poll, today's poll, let's say it's 50-50.
It's just wishful thinking, Alex.
Well, it's not wishful thinking. It's a poll in the Sunday Times. Listen, can I ask you why is Boris Johnson...
Why are you shouting over me?
I'm just trying to explain and ask you a question, and then I'll let you answer it. Boris Johnson instituted...
The nationalists like yourself have spoken over
Mark, I think we're destined to agree to disagree, Mark. But thank you so much for your contribution to the programme.
There you go.
Yeah, well, there you go. I mean, I feel for a long time I was a bit conflicted about this interview because I felt that, you know, he yanked my chain a bit. And I did manage to get a few jabs in against him. You called him the king of wishful thinking, told him he had no way forward and so on. I'm a bit more happy with it now. But I think this, and said the Scottish Parliament's full of grifters, gropers, and no-hopers. Didn't like that too much. Of course, directed actually to him anyway. So, I mean, this is the thing that I feel about this though is that, you know, he had 3 hours, as I said, 3 hours to, you know, make his case, and he wasn't even gracious enough to bring me on and just say, just treat me like, okay, you know, here's the guy who's got some arguments here, just bullied and talked over me. And I was just like, if that's the way he behaves in national TV, what the hell is he going to be like in private? Thank you very much, Karen. That's very kind of you. And it says here, I'm reminded of the Maya Angelou quote, people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. That's that. Anyway, I didn't feel so great after that, but I'm quite happy with it now. I've come to terms with it, and I think it's actually quite good. Now,
good for you.
Yes, that's that. Anyway, but I think another thing was, I mean, how many actual one-on-one discussions did you see with him? We never saw anything at all. He was always talking to people on his own side, and then claiming that was him, you know, being magnanimous or whatever it is with his big intellect or whatever it is. I don't know. Anyway, David.
Hello.
Right. Let's move on to the topic of the eulogies.
Yes, indeedy. So all week, of course, guys, we've heard Alex Salmond brought Scotland to the brink of independence. Well, what he actually did was he managed to procure a vote on Scotland's future from a weak as London lagger UK Prime Minister. He proceeded to steal every advantage he could get away with in the setting up of the vote, and he still lost by a wide margin, 55.1% to 44.9%, so 10.2%. So a hammering, in other words. So it wasn't close at all. And this week, that apart, we've seen a lot of eulogies, as you say, from people within the SNP, some on his side, some not. So most of the usual suspect you could pretty much have predicted. So Fergus Ewing, for example, as always, spoke very warmly of Alex Salmond and very critically of the treatment he received at the hands of people in his former party. Fergus labelled the SNP treatment of Alex Salmond latterly as pathetic, shameful and Stalin-esque. He's, of course, referring there to Stalin's habit of airbrushing out of history any of his former colleagues once they became his enemies. This is only fair because Fergus, to his credit as an SNP guy, has been a stalwart for Salmond in recent years. He's never spoken ill of him, unlike several others who are now first in line to produce crocodile tears. Talking of which, of course, John Swinney, that most duplicitous of operators, spoke out to say that Salmond had been such an inspiration. All this absolute nonsense, and such a boon to the independence movement. Can this really be the same John Swinney who said only 4 months ago that he would never campaign with Alex Salmond again, as Yep, he's very distant from who he is. Oh, John, what a shame. But oh dear, but not like Honest John to change his tune so rapidly, not much. But Pete Wishart, of course, joined the chorus. Pete Slippers Wishart, lamenting the passing of Sam. Have you got the video there, Mark?
Yes, I do have that. A big thank you, though, first of all, to Andy Mack for putting it the donation for the super thanks donation. That's great. Now, you can also, if you like this show, this is a good time anyway to put in a donation message. If you like this show, please donate. You can go get a super thanks, super sticker on YouTube, or you can go to our website and there's a donate button there. Everything is helpful. Can't do any of that. Just like and subscribe. That'd be great. Thank you. All right, so let's have a look at this Wishart thing.
That made up this Alex Salmond. Alec, watching him conduct political debate and work a room, was watching a political masterclass in engagement and communication. He was able to do this with a charm that was so effective and it was so beguiling that people naturally felt that he wanted to contribute and be with Alex Salmond. Scotland will miss Alec. We will all miss Alec in the Scottish National Party. And we've always got to remember that he came so close to delivering what so many people thought was almost impossible, Scotland becoming an independent nation, a nation of our own. He took the Scottish National Party from a fringe interest. When I was first elected, it was 5 MPs, and we were on 18% of the vote in Scotland. We came so close to securing an independent nation of our own, and that would never have been possible without the energy, the charisma and dynamism of Alex Salmond. We're all hurting in the Scottish National Party today. We have lost one of our giants in our political movement, and I hope that everybody will extend their sympathies to Moira and to the rest of the family, to his colleagues in the Alba Party, and to everybody who worked with him throughout all these years in a mission that Alec helped to shape and design.
Wasn't that emotional, guys?
Yeah, to bring a tear to a glass eye.
Tears to a glass eye, indeed. But can this be the same Pete Wishart who said only last month, while we wouldn't have come so close to winning the independence referendum without Alex Salmond, we also could not get over the line partly because of him? Meow, baby. Oh dear. Right. 4 weeks later, he took us right to the brink. Yeah, you'd have won it with him there, of course, Pete. What an absolute scumbag. But Joe Cherry, in fairness, someone I've said many times is one of the less detestable SNP figures. Did speak with real passion, genuinely. She said, I really am shocked and utterly devastated at the death of Alex Salmond. And again, she's been a staunch supporter, so I believe that she means it. And she also said, what a pity others could not be more gracious. This was in response to, what's her name? Leslie Riddick writing a really nice eulogy. Joe said, what a pity others could not be more gracious and instead persist with their insinuations against someone who can no longer defend himself. It's really quite disgraceful. Well, fair enough. So in summary, what we've seen in terms of eulogies is a split. You've had the people who've always been on his side, even within the SNP after he left, who've quite rightly said he was a good guy, and absolutely lambasting in real anger his erstwhile critics in the party, and they're absolutely right to do so, as I think we've just seen.
Yeah, so Mark, what have you thought of these eulogies?
Yeah.
I mean, you talked about hypocrisy earlier. This is your chance to shine.
It's hypocrisy on steroids, it really is. These guys are talking about giving their condolences to his family. The guy would be in prison if they got their way. He'd have died in prison if they'd have got their way. You know, how can you give your condolences to a man that you were you wiped off the history of the SNP, you tried to discredit in every single way possible, and then you tried to lock him up as a political prisoner, because that's what it would have been. That's what it would have been. Whether whatever you think of the man, his health would have deteriorated with the stress of that. That's something to, without a doubt, that had an impact on. Would have had an impact on his health, and it would have had an impact on what's happened these last few days. So they tried to have him locked up and the hypocrisy of them standing up saying he's a giant and my condolences to Moira. I think if I was Moira, I'd be turning around saying, well, I daren't say on this show what I'd be saying, because I'd be fuming. And I hope none of them go to his funeral, because you know what they tried to do to that man, whether you like him or not. I personally don't. You know, I don't have any time for him. I don't have any time for his politics. But I don't believe anybody should go through what he went through, what the SNP tried to do to him.
Oh yes, I think this is an important point. Actually, you can dislike the politics, but still stand for an injustice that seems to have been done. Now, how it's going to come out, we will talk a little bit about what's coming forward from the unresolved issues. Let's put it that way, from his death. Now, I saw this eulogy by Wings Over Scotland. Let me see if I got this somewhere. And it was quite nauseating, actually. So it was called here The Giant. The Giant. Oh, why is it like that? It's not supposed to be like that. Anyway, this one. Yeah. The Giant here is. It's hard to write an obituary for someone you can't quite believe is dead, but the amount of kind of revisionism in this thing is quite impressive here. I'll just give you one example of it. He's talking about when Wings, Reverend Stuart Campbell, who runs it, was talking about Salmond's show on Russia Today. He says his controversial RT show, controversial only because the small-minded and visionless drones in control of the country's domestic broadcasters failed to provide it with a more mainstream outlet. You know, like as if they were going to put this kind of propaganda on their mainstream channels. But in fact, what did happen was he ended up taking Russian money. And, you know, people say this. They say, oh but we're editorially free. Right, we're taking the Russian money, but we can say what we like in this channel. And I would say another person we know says the same thing, Mr. Galloway, as well. The whole point is, though, it's still they wouldn't be paying you if it didn't benefit them. This is the way it works. And there is benefit there. Of course, there's benefit in Alex Salmond being able to broadcast for a Russian broadcaster. In itself, it's a propaganda victory for them. And we just saw, we talked about this 2 weeks ago, about the Iranian army paying for fake Scottish nationalist accounts as well. I mean, it's just the same thing. Really, they do it, and then what happens then is that you find out that Alex Salmond somehow is sympathetic to Russian issues, sympathetic to Iranian issues. That's what they're paying for.
Yep.
And you know that, and that's why we talk about this. You know, this influence is anti-Semitism, that's rising in Scottish politics. It's imported, it's bought for, it's paid for.
Yes.
And it comes through people like Alex Salmond, and it comes through these bots. It's terrible, really. I mean, on the subject. There's another thing. He sought consensus and cooperation at every turn. I don't think so.
The only consensus he wanted was everyone to agree with him that we should be independent. That's all that was the only consensus.
That's a very good point there, David. That's a very good.
You picked up one.
That's a very good point. I think you just change your name; it would be easier. Anyway, Wings was a bit unhappy at us. I don't know if I've got this actually. I don't know if I have this.
But there's the quote, yeah.
Yeah, because he was grumpy at us. He said, imagine being this tiny-brained grunting oaf. He's talking about me. He says, tiny-brained grunting oaf and attacking Sam's intellect. This was because I said that I've always said this, that nationalism is an intellectual dead end. There's no intellectualism in it whatsoever. No. You just go, we're going to form another country. That's it. Where's the intellectualness in that? I mean, it's not that complicated. There's everything from that is just a justification or an excuse. There's no intellect behind it. There's no thing about, I mean, the best you can get maybe is self-determination, but this is ground that's been covered many, many times. Yes. There's no new thinking in this thing at all. So I said, of course, he's not an intellect. He wasn't an intellect. He was a tiny-minded Anglophobe who wanted to divide Scotland. And he said, called me a tiny-brained grunting oaf, and for attacking Sam's intellect. He did burps smarter than you, son, which is lovely imagery, but to use the parlance, we'll take no lessons on oafishness from Salmond or any lessons on intellect from people who are blinded by dead-end nationalism, and certainly won't take any lessons on what's the truth from a sad little liar like Mr. Stuart Campbell of Wings Over Scotland, who doesn't even live in Scotland. He would not even live here, to make his arguments and see what's actually going on around him. It's absolute.
And feel the effects of them,
exactly.
More importantly.
Right, okay, next up, the ringleader of the Nationalist Circus is still on. So, Mark, we're going to get Mark talking, I think, about the flight. So, back in just a second to discuss that. Mark, I noticed that you were quite active on social media about this flight, repatriation flight.
Yes. I just find it incredible that the SNP and nationalists using the death of this man to push to have an argument with Westminster just says everything about what they're like. Now, the RAF do not repatriate citizens of the UK. They don't do it. They only do it for the royals, or if there's special circumstances, like if we're at war and they're bringing soldiers home and things like that.
Oh yeah, of course.
Now, they don't do it for ex-MPs, ex-MSPs, ex-First Ministers, or ex-Prime Ministers. They just don't do it. Now, why should they do it for this man? And they knew this, but still they pushed the narrative of the RAF should do this. By all accounts, the UK government had already told the Scottish government, look, it's not protocol, we won't be doing it. But yet they still pushed this narrative of Westminster are bad, they're not going to do it, so we'll have to do it and all this. Why did he not have insurance?
Yeah, I know, this is the big question here. Why did he not have insurance?
Well, do we know that he didn't have insurance?
We don't know.
We don't know.
But it's not just insurance. He was there on behalf of the Macedonian government who invited him to give, or whoever it was, to invite him to give a speech. Surely they would have paid for his flight, because I doubt he would have paid for it himself.
Yes, of course.
So he must have had the right kind of insurance to be able to do this as a private citizen. But if you're going to do it for Salmond, then you're going to have to do it for every single British citizen that dies abroad. Because you can't, these are not special, we give enough money to politicians. They have enough expenses where they have the heating paid for them, they have everything paid for them.
Yes.
Why should, when they're out of government and out of office, should we still be paying for them? It doesn't make any sense. But again, it's been made into a grievance. They don't care about Alex Salmond. They don't care about his family. They just care about having an argument with Westminster and trying to make a political hay out of this. Yeah. And the SNP are doing this as well for another reason, I think. Right. I think it's another reason they're doing this. They're doing this because they're desperate to get Alex Salmond's fans back on side and back into the SNP.
Oh, yes, that's a good point.
And if they don't, and this idea this morning I heard, and it was on the National, it was all over the bit that the Scottish government had agreed to bring his body back, repatriate him, and pay for it by taxpayers' money. And then suddenly we found out from Alba, an Alba source had told a news agency, no, and a private individual has paid for it. I've had information from a source who told me that's being disputed. They're not sure about that. Right. I don't know where
it
we
seems
stand.
To me, it's
moment.
like it's a non-issue, isn't it? But it's been blown up as typical into this kind of bizarre. UK government is bad for not doing it, or the Scottish government is going to do it. They're great, aren't they? Aren't we great? And then you can imagine the scenes. They're going to bring them back with in the coffin draped with the salt tire, and the cameras are going to be everywhere, and piper's going to be playing the lament.
Someone actually said they should have a state funeral.
I know, people say that. That's the thing.
Said they should have a state funeral.
I know, a state funeral. You're like, I mean, be serious. I mean, just even in the case, first of all, he's not the current First Minister, not even an MP, not even an MSP. Right?
Well, prime ministers don't get state funerals. Not every prime minister gets a state funeral.
Right.
He's trying to make money for himself.
Yes.
I mean, he was charging to be overseas, so it's not like he was on state business or doing something for the country. It was for his own personal benefit.
Yes. Well, some people have said that, you should bring him back, but only if the coffin was draped in the Union flag. And I'm like, no, don't. No. First of all, that's an honour reserved for soldiers, right, for a start. And, secondly, this is the thing, is that this idea, he doesn't deserve. He tried to spend his whole life trying to break up the UK. Did you miss that part? Why does he now get the benefit of the UK later? It's like Hamza Yousaf, you get all the benefits and then you try and break up the country. I don't think so. It doesn't work that way. It shouldn't work that way. Anyway, for these type of people, he sponged enough. It says he sponged enough off the UK. Do you think David he sponged? Was a sponger?
More, absolutely. I think he sponged more than enough. And I mean, this whole the way that the SNP has reacted to the circumstances of the death and all this discussion of having the RAF bring the flight home, this is just the ultimate and cynical SNP stunts, using the death of a dead enemy, frankly, of their party, as they really was, as a mechanism to restate their sense of Scottishiness. I mean, what an absolute joke. Have these people got no substance to them at all? All the time, of course, saying, "Oh, don't you dare impugn the man when he's just died. Think of his family." What didn't you think of his family when you were telling everybody how useless he was until 2 weeks ago? So now it's just both disgraceful and laughable in equal measure.
Well, I think they figured out he's more used to them dead than alive. But that seemed to be the case. In any case, now seems to be part of a nationalist machine trying to make him into a saint, Saint Salmond, the gropey. I don't know. And I imagine that future historians who don't really know too much about the story, searching for clues in the dark, might write, the poets said Saint Salmond flew home on a saltire draped unicorn and was sent to Brigadoon, his final resting place, on the traditional burning of the camper van ceremony. On his birthday, every Scot must sing Flower of Scotland and eat a celebratory pie and put in the holy ketchup. Now, is this a sainthood? Sainthood is unwarranted, isn't it, David?
I should say sainthood. Well, certainly not. One thing I would say about sainthood. Now, I don't care at all about the machinations of the court case, whether there was a conspiracy against it. But I would say this. Journalists in equal measure this week, depending on their own point of view, some of them have said, oh, well, of course, he absolutely ruined his legacy with, fair enough, he wasn't convicted, but the way that everybody knows he was behaving was a disgrace. And yeah, we know that the jury couldn't quite find him guilty, but even so, we all know what it was like. That's what some journalists are saying. Other journalists are saying, well, of course, it was a disgrace because, I mean, he was found not guilty, but it's still being held against him. And you just think, hang on a minute. Even in death, he's still dividing the country. Half of them think he was brilliant. The other half think he was terrible. So, no, saint, my God, no. But the other thing I would add, I know a guy who's friendly with some of the guys who were on his legal team. And the fight that they had to persuade them to see even something as anodyne as, well, of course, I know I'm not a saint. And I know I could have been a better man. I'm told his lawyer said to him, listen, you've got 12 completely independent witnesses here accusing you of exactly the same thing. You have got to give me something here or else you're going to be found guilty. You cannot possibly, nobody gets away with stuff like this from 12 independent people. And it was only then he consented to say, okay, maybe I could have been better. And he was so angry about that afterwards. He went after everybody who had been trying to impugn him and malign his character. And that, I think, is what drove him in recent years. I really do. I think he was furious about this slur on his reputation, even though he got found guilty. So, saint? Oh, I don't think so, guys. Anything but no.
Right. Okay. Well, we'll come back. Now, next thing is we're going to come back with another section, and that's going to be all about what happens next. And what's going to happen now? Salmond is gone. Is it? Someone said it's a big black hole missing in Scotland's politics, which is maybe a double-edged insult. So we'll be back in a second. Okay, so where are we? Kevin McKenna said in the Herald that this may be an opportunity for the Alba party to make an electoral breakthrough. I don't even know how I could write that with a straight face. Though they must really sharpen up their internal governance.
Is that all they have to do?
Yeah, partly. And I still think that the SNP's malevolent clown show in the Sturgeon Yusuf Swinney area has all but destroyed the work of Alex Salmond. And this is a kicker. If the independence movement is to be saved, though, it will rest on the shoulders of such as Kenny McCaskill, Ash Regan, Chris McElhenney, and Joanna Cherry. All of them are much more able and committed to independence than the semi-literate glove puppets who make up Honest Jordan's Swinney's cabinet.
That's his top team. 2 has-beens and 2 never-will-be's. That's it. Ash Regan, my God, with their independence thermometer.
She can stick that up.
Ash. Seriously, man.
Yes. Mark, you get any quick thoughts on this Alba? I mean, it's surely
Alba were never ever a serious party in the first place when he was alive. So why would there be any more serious now he's dead? They were a joke, as you said earlier, Mark. He didn't even vote for them himself, so that says everything. Alba are insignificant. I don't think even they'll be around in 26. I think they'll disband or something.
But the question there, David, I think is something you mentioned a little bit. Is that would they go back then to the SNP? It seems unlikely, right?
It does seem unlikely, but I mean, these people can't stop fighting with each other. It really doesn't matter which banner they're under, which flag of convenience they use. Most of them hate each other. We know that the Westminster SNP MPs, all 9 of them, detest the guys in Holyrood, think they're a bunch of, idiots. And Alba has fallen out really badly with SNP, as we know. Okay, we know that they've got some additional members this week, but I think Mark's right. They're almost
another 2 people.
Yeah, quite. They're saying 10,000. I mean, all that, if they are,
come on,
that's what they're saying. Make 10,000 now, not 10,000.
There's no chance of that.
Exactly, but that was a figure I saw mentioned 10,000 members now. I think anyway, but they're just people jumping ship from the SNP. It's not anybody else who hasn't been involved previously joining Alba. That's not happening. And in terms of the next election, they just got 0.5% of the vote in the general election. 0.5% of the vote. So 1 in every 200 people voted Alba. Great. It's just not going to cut it at all in 2026. So yeah, I think what's far more likely is I'll just talk about this now and we'll get it over with. Alba will not be a significant factor in 2026. The SNP and Labour will almost certainly still be fighting out for most of the constituencies. SNP will still be either first or second largest party, though, guys. I mean, there's no doubt about that. When you're on 30% of the vote, having had a slump, you're still somebody to be reckoned with, whereas Alba just aren't at all. They might get 2 or 3 less seats if they're still around. I think it's more likely they will fold back in and some people will leave and some other loser parties will spring up, no doubt, but that's Scotland. You always get small parties. So, yeah, I don't think we're going to see any great change at all, but no, Alba's not going to be anything.
Well, I think it's kind of indicative that neither the SNP nor Alba have any person that can take over the reins. There's no successor in waiting. There's no person you're going to go, oh yeah, that person's going to come up and they might do some damage. You're like, well, actually, they would do some damage, but not to their own cause. That's the problem. It's not when you go like, oh, this guy's really interesting. Oh,
there's also another point, Mark. There's also another point is. If people think that this court case now is dead and buried because of what happened to Alex Salmond, it's not.
No,
it's not. It really isn't. It's still going to go ahead, and there's still going to be answers to things are going to start coming out, and that court case will still go ahead.
Yeah, so I was wondering. I asked Roddy QC, who is a well-known barrister, I think head of the barristers in Scotland or whatever they're called, if a newspaper publishes a dead man's papers, are they still liable for libel? And he said yes, but I think it might be quite a bit of an edge case there because a journalist will be more willing to post stuff than the person themselves. The person themselves more scared of being sued. Newspapers got resources. Right.
But it could be David Davis. It could be David Davis in Parliament because he's good. He was good friends with Alex Salmond, and he has already said that he could use his privilege to put some things in the public domain.
Yes, well, that could be quite something. So, in general, what for the independence movement? Well, it's no independence movement really. No. Since Salmond has gone, I don't think it's not really. we could say what's going to happen to Salmond, but he wasn't. He was so insignificant, actually, in some sense. He wasn't even really a figurehead as such. He didn't have he wasn't old enough or wise enough, let's put it that way, to have that kind of the guru behind it all, or the Ayatollah, type figure. He wasn't at that stage. So he was just another, and perhaps he did that to himself because he was just a member of this small party. So he was part of an insignificant party that he didn't even vote for, instead of being an elder statesman that the whole movement could have drawn upon. Okay, moving on. So what can I say to close this section about the man and his legacy? Nationalists think he's a hero for trying to make them free, but it was freedom on his terms, a freedom that would have impoverished and diminished them and us, while giving Salmond and his divisive crew unlimited power. And if that was how he behaved when he had limited power, then we can only be thankful that he never got more. Moving on, there'll be much more to say about this, of course, in the coming weeks. Moving on, we're going to talk to Mark, who's just going to have a brief section about Africa. Back in a second.
Yeah, I'll be quick on this, but the First Minister is giving away more of our money. £12.5 million is given to African education projects to Malawi, Rwanda and Zambia, who have probably got better educational systems than Scotland has right now anyway. But he's given £12.5 million away. Now that's on while councils across the country are discussing either teachers' jobs, getting rid of teachers, or shortening the school time because they are short of cash. So we have an educational system that's absolutely in dire need. We have SNP austerity. We have 500 million budget cuts are going to be made. We've got a 1.5 billion black hole, and we have a First Minister who's giving money away to African countries for education when ours is in absolute dire straits. It is quite unbelievable. Again, from this government, the holding back £145 million worth of money to the Scottish schools. They're holding that back. That could be well cut in the budget. It is quite staggering. What just so we can play international leader?
Why isn't it reserved? This is the question I had. Isn't it reserved international aid?
Well, yeah, it is, and he's also been meeting the USA ambassador and some other ambassadors in London this week. He says that he was talking to Jane Hartley and had a picture with her about energy, about trade, and about investment, which is all reserved to the UK government. So it's again, we had Sturgeon doing it, we had Humza doing it, now we've got Sweeney doing the same, all acting outside of their remit, all acting as if they're a separate country, and it's quite staggering. And we have got all these cuts coming to Scotland, and he's giving, and some saying, I've heard people saying, well, it's only 12.5 million and it's over 5 years. That's just one section that we've given millions away to. We've given millions and millions and millions that are leaving this country that should be paid, that should be going to our public services when we are in a crisis as we are in now, where all that money, 12.5 million would go a long way to for education. It may, it means teachers may not be cut. The school times may not have to be cut.
It's ridiculous. It really is. I mean, the priorities are all wrong. I mean, they talk about that, as you said, the 1 million black hole, and then not 1 billion black hole, sorry, and then they don't, they give money away like that. Well, it's not entitled to, just to make themselves feel good. This is we get to generate a headline and to convince themselves that they're actually good people and running their own country. The UK government should really just stamp that out. Really.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, can it be reserved overseas aid? Because Holmesy gave all that money to UNRWA, didn't he? He didn't.
The Scottish Government have a budget where they do have a free section budget where they can give money away, a pot, but it has to be in certain things. I can't remember how much. I think one was 1 million. That's pot C. I think pot B was 20 odd million, and then there's pot A, which is a little bit more than that. I haven't got the figures on that, but so they are allowed to give money away. But I think that should be stopped. But I would also think a First Minister or a government in Scotland at the moment, with the budget cuts that we've got, would think, well, we won't give money away. We'll keep that because we need to fill that black hole. We need to fill that that money. That's what a sensible political operator would do. A First Minister that we need. But instead, they don't care about Scotland. They don't care about our education or any of our kind of councils. All they care about is looking good on the international stage and acting like an international leader. That's all they care about.
Yeah.
It's terrible. Kind of reminds me of that joke. It's the Scottish Government visited an orphanage in Malawi the other day, and it's sad to see the look of hopelessness on their faces, said Kodzo, age 6.
Brilliant. I like it.
Okay, things you can do to support the show. You can buy a T-shirt or a mug. T-shirt, yes. Majority. Great. Subscribe to the show on YouTube. You can't subscribe, and I don't know why you wouldn't. Please just like it. You can tell your friends about us, and you can also do all of the above, which makes us feel extremely happy and fulfilled. Underlined exclamation mark. Coming up, it's a moment you have been all waiting for. You have all been waiting for. The highlight of the week. It's Zoomer of the Week.
Yay.
As previously mentioned, Mary's not doing a Zoomer this week. But
it's too easy.
No. My Zoomer is one of our favourite Zoomers, the Inde-Car guy.
Oh, yeah.
My regular readers will know.
What's he been up to?
The Inde-Car guy produces broadcasts from his car in between giving driving lessons in Glasgow. He always wears a jumper, usually, as well. That is, whenever his signals are not blocked by MI5 fans, which are apparently trying to block his broadcasts. That was a previous Zoomer of the week. Look back in the archives, you will find it.
He thinks that they follow him around, right?
Yeah, he does. He thinks they follow him around anyway. Yesterday, Inde-Car guy was enthusiastically supporting a proposal by another nationalist nutter. Let me find it. Yes, to rename the Queensferry crossing to the Alex Salmond Memorial Bridge.
Beautiful.
And there we go. And he says, Salmond's Crossing, the name works on 2 levels. This is like some insight here.
He's really thought this out.
As the memorial to the man and as a symbol of crossing over in death. I like the feel of this name for a beautiful structure. Now, I don't know about you, but having to think about Alex Salmond crossing over in death every time you travel to Fife is not really something that is going to improve tourist numbers to the kingdom, as we like to say. We will say that. Even actually, we didn't mention that when Salmond says Scotland is a country, not a county. Well, we all say, well, Fife's a kingdom, so what?
Yeah.
Anyway, so there'll be some other suggestions, though, in the comments where the Sleepy Cuddles Bridge or the Gropey McGroper Bridge come to mind. But those, with any luck, I mean, this is the kind of nonsense that we would actually had. If independence, everything would have been renamed Alex Salmond. Alex Salmond Roads, Alex Salmond Bridges, Alex Salmond Memorials, everywhere. That would not have been good at all. And for that reason alone, we should have rejected independence. But anyway, we won't be getting this. So anyway, typical Zoomerism. That's my Zoomer of the week.
Very good.
Right,
Very
okay,
good.
so who's next?
Me, Derek.
Derek is next. Right, okay. What the Zoomer guy I see is quite a Zoomer. I didn't get a video of him saying it though. That would have clinched it. Right, anyway, moving on.
Okay, Smokey, my Zoomer is horror fiction writer and best friend forever of Nicola Sturgeon, Val McDermid. I'm not sure whether that should be horror and fiction writer, but anyway, on Monday. As she's colloquially known, Big Val was wheeled out on Radio 4's Today programme to give her thoughts on the passing of Alex Salmond. And her very first sentences went thus. This was her opening statement.
We still feel a democratic deficit here in Scotland. We vote one way and we don't get the government we vote for.
Right, that's actually the second one. Hold that thought, guys.
There's another one.
There's the other one. Okay, her opening statement was, asked about Alex Salmond, I'll remember him as playing a pivotal role in putting Indy front and centre for Scottish people. But we have to remember, he didn't do it alone. And, of course, there's no denying that the revelations about his behaviour have undercut his reputation. 3 sentences it took her to reference a court case in which he was acquitted. So, gee, thanks for that, Val. I wonder if she'll do the same when Nicola Sturgeon dies. She'll say, she was great. But let's not forget, she was taken into court one time. What a joke. But then she followed up. We just run it again. She then followed up with this little...
this one, yes. This is quite something.
We still feel a democratic deficit here in Scotland. We vote one way and we don't get the government we vote for.
Right. Okay. So, in Scotland, we vote one way and we don't get the government we vote for. Val, baby, 3 months ago, Scotland voted... 37 out of 57 seats went to the Labour Party. The Labour Party then formed the national UK Westminster government. I think that's called getting the government you vote for. I don't know what you think, Val. Anyway, as a reminder, guys, I've used this statistic quite a few times, and I'm just updating it now, which I haven't done since the election. Who can remember how many times since 1945 Scotland has voted in largest numbers and seats for the party that went on to form the Westminster government? Val says it never happens. Anybody remember how many times it's happened since 1945? Remembering that general elections are traditionally 5 years apart, the answer is 12 times. 12
I was going to go for 10. I was thinking 10, but I don't want to embarrass myself if it was wrong.
So that's, considering they're 5 years apart and 79 years, that's not a bad return, really. So certainly this myth that Scotland doesn't get the government it votes for, what she's saying there is, we vote for a party that stands 57 candidates in a legislature for which there are 650 seats, and would you believe it, we don't win?
I know.
How about...
This is terrible.
How about voting for a party that does stand in seats throughout the nation? Then you might win. In fact, we just did, Val. So if you want to get the government that for Scotland that the rest of the UK votes for, given that Scotland hasn't voted in largest numbers for a Conservative government since 1955, I think I see a way out of this, Val. Vote Labour. So anyway, so for her obedient regurgitation of the Sturgeon line and for sheer idiocy in repeating a lie about general elections, you're my Zoomer, Big Val, baby.
Have you actually read any of her books? I mean, is any...
Shocking, certainly not. No, I haven't. No, I've never.
I mean, it might be good. I don't know. I mean, persons often can create good art, even if they're artists. Like Brian Cox.
One thing I will say, guys. Now, this is not me expressing an opinion or suggesting this is true, but somebody I saw on another timeline said that he knows a girl who told him that Val McDermid is a very aggressive sex pest, right? That's what he said. Now, I'm not saying that's true. I'm not suggesting it's true for a moment. I'm just quoting what somebody said on Twitter, and somebody else answered that saying, by reading her books, it appears she has some visceral feeling about damaging either handsome men or women. That's what they said. So it sounds like either. I mean, she could be just channeling God knows what when she writes this stuff, but that appears is what her books are all about, these modern horror fiction books. So I have to say, I don't think I fancy them at all, if this is indicative of how she writes.
Well, you never know, though. They might be quite good. But maybe someone in the comments can tell us if they're any good or not. Indeed. Okay, next up, it's a good shot. I mean, this. She has not been listening to you, Derek. Has she not been listening to you at all? And finding out that that we do get the government we vote for.
Indeed. Just look at my timeline, Big Vat. Oh, she can't. She blocked me after I said that. So
that's right. Next up is going to be Mark with his Zoomer.
Right. My Zoomer of the week, and it is that Gillian Sturgeon, Nicola's sister. Now she's managed to make Alex Salmond's death all about her and her family. On I think it was Facebook, she posted, we've had hundreds and hundreds of people contact contact us with their condolences.
Yes, here it is. I've got it here. There it goes.
Why would anybody contact Sturgeon's family to send condolences about a man who they try to get locked up? It's the usual Gillian Sturgeon. Look at me, everybody, look at me. It's quite staggering. It really is quite staggering.
I like how she says quite clearly that Alex Salmond wasn't a friend of the family.
Yeah. But
you don't see.
You know.
What was it? Can you put that up again? What was the last line on it? Any death is sad, no matter what happens in life.
Oh, she got that in a fortune cookie.
Well, no, that's a bit cryptic, isn't it?
Yeah, it just shows you with Gillian Sturgeon.
It suggests a lot of negative stuff happened in his life.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. That was a short and sweet one. I mean, it's pretty straightforward, that one there. It's up to the lady of the manor to decide this time. You've got 3 nominations.
Right. Well, let me think about it. So we've got Inde-Car guy. Yes. Who wants Salmond Bridge, Salmond Crossing,
Alex Salmond Memorial Crossing to Heaven.
Oh God, help
that
us.
Type of thing.
Oh, little angels going up. We've got Val McDermid, who's just
like cherubs, little salmon cherubs on the bridge. That's
God
what we're
help
looking
us.
for.
We've got Val McDermid, who is not getting the government that she's voting for. And we've got Gillian Sturgeon. It's all about me. Well, I think the 3 of them are very good, I have to say. And there's very little between them. So what am I going to choose? I don't actually know what I'm going to choose on. The Inde-Car guy's an absolute zoomer, that's true. Val McDermid, oh God. And Gillian Sturgeon, she's not very... I think the person... I'm going to vote for Val McDermid. She's a good friend of Sturgeon's, isn't she?
Yes.
And I think that alone she deserves to be the Zoomer of the week. So.
I wouldn't have done it without Derek.
Well done.
Thank you.
Well done, Derek.
Yeah, exactly. What a guy.
This is just going to go on. I can see this happening next week as well.
Yeah, exactly.
It's going to go on. Right. Okay. A worthy win there for David.
That's me. That's what they call me.
And we're so happy to have you all with us in the show every week in Scotland's #1 politic chat. It's a bit of a laugh, I suppose, isn't it really? It's been quite a momentous week, I suppose. And we need to move on, but we will see you next week, same time, same place, next Wednesday. My thought for the week is actually something I noticed when I was thinking about all these nationalist politicians has a single one ever said they're sorry for the division and hate they promoted? And the answer is no, they haven't. They haven't said at all. They've not even said it's a necessary side effect of what they're trying to do. Not to say, it's going to be uproar while we're doing this. It's all rainbows and unicorns all the time. And if anything, they do blame their opponents for the division they've created. We've seen this a couple of times tonight. But until they do that, until they do take the blame for the division they've caused, our show and our job will continue. Thank you very much for all your comments. It was great to have you on tonight in a slightly extended show, and we will see you again next week. A huge thank you to Derek Griffiths, and also known as David Griffiths to his friends, and to Mark Ziegfeld. So we've no problems with that name, and of course to Mary as well.
And thanks for all the comments, everyone.
Comments as well. Thank you, Alan, for your support as well, and thank you to people who donated through the show. Thank you very much, and we will see you again next week. Take care.
Thanks.
Take care.
Good night.
Bye now.
Good night, everyone.